Welcome to Cruise News, your daily update on everything happening at sea. Visit cruisenews.io to see today's stories and sign up for email alerts. So today we are taking a look at the rapidly shifting realities of global cruise travel.
Right, and for you listening, this is really a look at how unpredictable taking a ship across the world has actually become.
Yeah, booking a cruise used to be about, just put your brain on autopilot. But today you face some changing realities ashore. It requires a lot more savvy.
Absolutely. We are drawing from 3 recent articles today. We'll be covering developments in Antarctica, the Eastern Mediterranean, and the Caribbean.
Right. Our goal is to unpack how modern cruisers and cruise lines are navigating things like extreme geographical hurdles, sudden geopolitical roadblocks, and some very strict local laws.
Because the industry has scaled up so massively, these vessels are reaching remote places, and with that reach comes a collision with physical and political reality.
Exactly. Okay, let's unpack this. We will start with the physical barriers, looking at the literal bottom of the Earth.
The Drake Passage.
Yes, the Drake Passage. So Atlas Ocean Voyages is adding 6 fly cruise Antarctica departures for their 2027 and 2028 season.
Right, expanding their Drake Express expedition and their Drake Fly and Sail expedition.
And the logistics of this are fascinating. Basically, guests take private charter flights between Punta Arenas, Chile, and King George Island.
Shrinking a famously rough 2-day sea crossing down to just a 2-hour flight.
Yeah, that crossing is notoriously rough, right?
Oh, definitely. It's often called the Drake Shake. But the infrastructure required to make that 2-hour flight happen is pretty fragile.
How so? I mean, where exactly are they landing?
They fly into King George Island, which is in the South Shetland Islands. Specifically, it's the Teniente Rodolfo Marsh Martin Airport.
Okay, and I'm guessing that's not exactly a major international hub?
No, not at all. It is a single gravel runway.
Wow, a gravel runway.
Yeah, operations there are entirely weather dependent. The pilots actually have to visually confirm the strip before they can land.
So if there's heavy fog, you can't land.
Exactly. You are replacing the physical barrier of rough seas with the meteorological barrier of the Antarctic sky.
Right. And Atlas CEO James A. Rodriguez had an interesting quote about this. He said, the Drake Passage is a rite of passage for many travelers.
But the fly cruise is for those with more limited vacation time.
Yeah. And they also mentioned a pre-cruise Atlas immersion in Punta Arenas, featuring Patagonian cuisine and a visit to Magellan's Strait Park.
Which helps buffer the travel experience, right? It gives guests something structured to do on land.
So here's a question for you. This is kind of like deciding to climb a mountain but taking a helicopter to the final base camp instead of hiking the lower trails.
That's a good analogy, yeah.
Does bypassing that 500-mile sea crossing kind of rob the traveler of that badge of honor? Or is it just a necessary evolution for modern tourism?
Well, from an industry perspective, it is a necessary evolution. It opens up one of the most remote destinations on Earth to a much broader demographic.
Because not everyone has the time or the stomach for a 2-day rough sea crossing.
Precisely. But as we said, it relies on that incredibly fragile infrastructure, one gravel runway.
Right, so that's a geographical barrier that can be bypassed with a plane. But other barriers are entirely human-made and, well, impossible to fly over.
You're talking about the geopolitical roadblocks?
Yes, specifically what just happened with Virgin Voyages Scarlet Lady.
Right. This was a 10-night Eastern Mediterranean charter.
Run by Atlantis Events, right?
Yes. It was an LGBTQ plus charter carrying roughly 1,900 guests, and they were denied entry to Alexandria, Egypt, just 4 hours before the pilot and customs officers were supposed to board.
Wait, just 4 hours?
Yes, 4 hours. And this happened just days after Turkish authorities barred the exact same sailing from Kusadasi and Istanbul.
Right. The Turkish authorities cited that the visit didn't align with local moral values.
Which is an unprecedented situation for this charter company. Atlantis CEO Rich Campbell stated they have operated charters for 25 years without incident.
Yeah, he mentioned they actually brought 2,500 guests to Alexandria just last year.
Exactly. And Campbell called the Turkey decision pretty stunning. He noted it was the first time they were turned away specifically because of who they are.
And as for the Alexandria denial, Egypt gave absolutely no public explanation, despite Campbell stating they had, quote, full approval to arrive.
Right. It's a stark reminder of the clash between globalized cruise tourism and localized geopolitical climates.
So just objectively reporting the facts here, the logistical scramble must have been intense.
Yeah.
I mean, how does a cruise ship carrying 1,900 people just pivot 4 hours before docking?
The butterfly effect of suddenly changing a port call on a massive international itinerary is huge.
Walk us through that. Like, what happens on the ship in that moment?
First, there's the financial and guest services side. Alexandria excursions had to be instantly refunded to onboard accounts.
Right.
Administrative tasks like passport collections were postponed, and then the maritime operations team had to secure a new berth in real time.
Because you can't just drop anchor anywhere.
Right.
You need local pilots. You need a deep water berth.
Exactly. And they managed to reroute to China, Crete, but they had to replace a planned call in Heraklion with a sea day to make it all work.
It just shows the incredible real-time logistics required to navigate these sudden political walls.
It does. You are essentially a guest in another nation's sovereign waters, and those permissions can be revoked without warning.
Which is a perfect transition to our last story. We're moving from destinations that are outright banning ships to a destination that welcomes millions of cruisers but requires hypervigilance once they step ashore.
The Turks and Caicos Islands.
Right. So the U.S. State Department updated its travel advisory for the Turks and Caicos Islands on July 7th. They're keeping it at level 2.
Which means exercise increased caution.
And just for context, Grand Turk Cruise Center is a massive hub. They expect 350 to 400 cruise calls in 2026.
Over 1 million passengers annually.
Yeah, from lines like Carnival, Royal Caribbean, and Virgin. Now, the advisory warns of crimes of opportunity like pickpocketing aggressive vendors and hurricane exposure.
But the most critical warning in this update is their strict, zero-tolerance, local prohibition on firearms and ammunition.
Right. The advisory explicitly states that even a single bullet accidentally left in luggage can lead to imprisonment, fines, and deportation.
And U.S. permits are completely invalid there?
Yeah, at least 8 Americans have been prosecuted since November 2022 under these laws. But let me push back a bit here, just playing devil's advocate for the listener.
Sure.
Isn't a level 2 advisory incredibly common for international travel? Are we maybe making a mountain out of a molehill here?
That's a fair question. Level 2 is very common, yes. But it's vital to understand why this specific advisory is different.
Okay, how so?
Well, usually a level 2 advisory is about situational awareness. Keep an eye on your wallet, avoid certain neighborhoods at night, active things you can control.
Right, basic travel smarts.
But this ammunition law is passive. The danger might literally be packed in a seam of your beach bag weeks before you even board the ship.
Because people often use the same bags for different activities back home.
Exactly. And we have to contrast the relaxed vacation mode of cruisers with the rigid, unyielding reality of foreign law. There is no tourist exception for an honest mistake.
So even if it's clearly accidental, the local authorities don't offer leniency just because you're a tourist.
Right. And that makes this a uniquely perilous blind spot for American travelers coming from places with different firearms cultures.
So to sum up today's coverage, we started by looking at how travelers are hacking the weather in Antarctica to bypass the Drake Passage.
Right, utilizing charter flights to remote gravel runways.
Then we navigated the sudden moral and political laws in the Eastern Mediterranean that forced the Scarlet Lady to completely reroute just hours before docking.
And finally, the strict legal codes in the Caribbean that require absolute vigilance from tourists.
It really emphasizes that booking a cruise today isn't just about picking a nice cabin. It requires an active, informed mindset about global realities.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it leaves you with a thought to mull over. If an itinerary can be scrapped 4 hours before docking, or a stray item in a beach bag can lead to a prison sentence, how does that shift our fundamental expectation of the worry-free vacation?
That's a great question.
Are we entering an era where the modern traveler has to be just as agile and legally prepared as the multinational cruise lines themselves?
Definitely something to consider next time you pack your bags. Yeah. Thanks for listening to Cruise News. Visit cruisenews.io to catch up on the latest updates and sign up for free email alerts.